I can guarantee that you've never seen a handheld do what this handheld can do. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Ayaneo 3, and this definitely has to be the craziest handheld they've ever come up with. And by crazy, I mean we've got some amazing features built in here, like a 144 Hz OLED display, front-facing stereo speakers, which just happen to be some of the cleanest and loudest speakers that we've seen on the handheld so far. It's also powered by the AMD Ryzen Ai 9 HX370, which gives us plenty of power with that 890Mi GPU and 16 compute units. Around back, we've got pro-style trigger locks, so we can go from a hair trigger to a linear trigger at any given time. Analog sticks and triggers are Hall-based, and up top here, we've got a fingerprint sensor, Oculink port, USB 4, and all of the buttons we'll ever need for a handheld gaming machine. But the most interesting thing about the all-new Ayaneo 3 are the Magic Modules. You can set this up in any kind of controller layout you can think of. We've also got touchpads here, so if you want dual touchpads on this thing, it's not a problem to do so with the Magic Modules. If you want to get rid of the analog sticks altogether, you can set it up with just buttons and a touchpad. You can set it up with just D-pads if you'd like. The way this is set up is really interesting, because from software or even a physical button on the bottom of the unit, we can eject these Magic Modules at any given time. Going into this, I wasn't sure how this worked. I figured we'd just kind of pull on them and they'd come out, but having them be electronically controlled blew my mind. The first time I did it, it was so satisfying, and to tell you the truth, I just can't stop, replacing these modules now. This is absolutely amazing. Taking a look inside of the unit, you can see we've got several pogo pads. The Magic Modules actually have pogo pins, and these can be put in upside down if you want. Plus, the buttons are removable, so you can flip those around if they're the wrong way. You want to come up with a crazy combination, you can do it with this. Overall, with the Magic Module kit, there's 56 different unique combinations that you can set this up in. I've actually been messing around with the dual trackpad setup, and from IaSpace, we can actually adjust the sensitivity. We can set these up to have one be our scroll wheel, one be our full mouse. It's pretty awesome the way they've got everything put together here. If you want a regular D-pad, a dish-style D-pad, you want to go with the Xbox non-symmetrical layout or the PlayStation symmetrical layout, this will allow you to do it. When it comes to ergonomics, I think that Ayaneo has always delivered, and this is no different. It's top notch. The way they've got this set up, hugs the palm, index finger can go right in between here. Round back, we do have those pro trigger locks. So if you want to go with a linear trigger or a hair trigger, you've got the option with this. I mean, pro style controllers all the way around on this thing. And I've been using these quite a bit, swapping them between playing racing games and FPS games. But right now I've got this set up in kind of a PlayStation layout, the symmetrical analog sticks, which, I'm not used to. I'm personally used to kind of the Xbox layout. So we can swap that out real quick. Just make sure I've got this going the right way. And really, either way you look at it, if I did put it in upside down, I could always flip those buttons around. They do come off, so you can easily kind of adjust everything on this device. They are going to be offering two totally different variants of the Ayaneo 3, CPU variant and screen variant. So I've got the OLED here with the higher end CPU and the retro power color variant. But keep in mind, they're also going to be offering this with an 8840U and a 120Hz LCD panel that supports VRR. But when it comes to the overall specs of the one we're taking a look at, it's powered by that AMD Ryzen Ai 9 HX370. Amazing performer, 12 cores, 24 threads. We've got the built-in Radeon 890Mi GPU based on RDNA 3.5, and we've got 16 compute units. You can get this with up to 64 gigabytes of RAM running at 7500 megahertz. We've also got that 7-inch 144 Hz OLED display. It's a 16:9 aspect ratio, so it's 1920 by 1080. 800 nits of brightness. It does support HDR, 315 pixels per inch, 150% sRGB, 110% DCI-P3, and it supports 60 Hz, 90, 120, and 144. It supports a 2280 PCIe 4.0 M.2 SSD up to 4 terabytes. We've got a 50.25 watt-hour battery with 65 watt fast charging capabilities, and it's coming in at 690 grams, so about 30 grams heavier than the Steam Deck OLED. But it's not bigger than the Steam Deck. In fact, because we've got those round corners, it seems a bit smaller, and it is coming in a bit thinner. This is using Ayaneo's new Hypersound 2.0. We've got those dual front-facing stereo speakers. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this is the best sounding handheld that we've ever tested. Right now I'm at about 72-73% on the volume. Taking it up to 100%, this thing is booming. And it doesn't sound tinny. Large speaker cavities in this unit. They really did a bang-up job with the sound system in the Ayaneo 3. Checking out the triggers, right now obviously I've got the hair trigger lock turned completely off. These are Hall based and they're super accurate. Personally, love having something like this for racing games. That way I can kind of feather that gas if I want to use it for launch control or drifting. But we can go ahead and just flip that hair trigger on. And I mean, one press is going to be 100%. So it's just going to floor it. But once you're in linear mode, you've got full control over that trigger. With most of Ayaneo's handhelds, I've always had a really good time with the D-pad, and this is no different. We've got Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite just pulling off some of these special moves with the standard D-pad attachment here, or the standard D-pad magic module. I think they've kind of got it down to a science with their D-pads. In my opinion, it's kind of the perfect height. I do love the roll on it. Overall, it just feels really good, but we've got another one that we can test out here. So let me eject the left-hand side. And we'll go with the dish style, which I'm not a huge fan of, at least for fighting games. I mean, it does work out for other games. We'll just go ahead and place this right in. Give it a second to initialize, and there we go. And I'm probably, yeah, I knew I was going to be horrible at this. I could get used to it. I just don't like playing with these dish style D-pads. I mean, if this is what you're into, it could work out for you. Or, you know, a lot of newer players just use the analog stick itself. I also wanted to test out a first-person shooter so I can mess around with that hair trigger. Once we enable it, yeah, I mean, just a single tap, you're good to go. And when it comes to performance on the HX 370 with Doom Eternal, right now I'm at 1080p medium settings, 18 watt TDP. Up in the top left-hand corner, we've got Afterburner running, and we are over 60 FPS with it. In my full review, we will be running down a bunch of games. We're also going to run some benchmarks on this. But now I want to move over to my game capture and give you a look at the built-in software, because there's actually a lot to cover here with the new ISpace 3.0. Pressing the dedicated Ayaneo button is going to bring up our quick menu, and from here we can basically access everything we really need to. Under performance, out of the box, we've got an extreme profile, balanced profile, power saving. Now I have adjusted the extreme, but if we move down a bit, you can see this device will go anywhere from 5 watts up to 35 watts. I'm sitting around 18 most of the time, and for some of the higher end AAA games, I've taken it up a bit. Take a look at some more gameplay in just a little while. Smart TDP is still here. We've got the built-in performance overlay, which actually looks really good, but I do wish I could adjust the opaquency so we could see it a bit better. I'm going to be using Afterburner for most of my stuff. Fan configuration, I leave it set to smart, balanced profile, but you can set it to mute. You can go to max, 100%, and at 100%, yeah, this thing does get pretty loud, but it'll stay nice and cool. But with everything that I've tested so far, even up to 28 watts in balanced mode, we never went over 71 degrees Celsius. There's a ladder mode and a linear mode for that fan. Checking out our device, brightness, volume, RGB mode, charge policy. This is pretty cool. Bypass the charge completely. So if you've got this plugged into the wall and you don't want to hit that battery up to save the life of the battery, not battery life, this will help out just using bypass charging. Basically, it's going to use wall power instead of the built-in battery. Maximum charge, you can also set this up to 100%. Pause controller input while small window is displayed. Airplane mode, Bluetooth, we've got the basics there. The magic module section, and I've got them unplugged right now while I'm plugged into my game capture. From the controller section, desktop layout, gyro, vibration, analog triggers, so we can set up the sensitivity here directly for the triggers and the joysticks. Dead zone, you can turn this on or off. Custom key mapping directly from the quick menu. And we've got our quick assistant. From here, we can add more. We've got a few to choose from: Hibernate, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all the basics, even FSR. And finally, we can check for updates, system settings, task manager, device manager, but we can also hold the Ayaneo button and it's going to bring us into ISpace completely. From here, we've got our game launcher. It just scanned all of my default directories. It's got the games that I have installed right now. If we go into, let's say, Doom Eternal, it's just going to give us a little bit of information, download some box art and screenshots. I do think this looks really good and it's well improved from older versions of ISpace. Installed games, basically same thing we took a look at. And from device, this is where we can get into everything. Desktop layout, so we can set up our own layouts. And I actually did this when I had the touchpads installed. I set the right touchpad up as my mouse and the left touchpad as my scroll wheel, but this is fully mappable. From gyro, we've got hardware support and software support. From hardware, this is going to be in mouse mode. We can set this up to be our left stick or our right stick. Game, FPS, so we've got a couple to choose from. These are going to be our presets. FPS for something like Doom Eternal, I would use it exactly like it is here. Activation mode, we can have this so it's on all the time, or we can hold LT, RT, LT, basically nice hold hotkey for us to enable the gyro. And you can dial in the X-axis and the Y-axis from here. Joystick sensitivity, custom, so you can go with the Japanese or the standard. Standard is going to be more of an Xbox layout. Trigger sensitivity, vibration, and I'll tell you, this does have some really nice haptics built in. Going all the way up, you can really feel this thing. Button burst, basically like a turbo button. Joystick button, quick open, and device. So we can change the RGB from here. Charge policy, VRAM size, and I've set mine to 12 gigs since I've got a 64 gig model here. Display screen. We can also disable some CPU cores directly from ISpace. They've really added a ton of stuff to ISpace, but that's not even all of it yet. General is going to be our language and the server for ISpace. If you want to set up an Ayaneo account over on their website, you can. And performance, this is going to be my favorite spot. So I'm actually just going to create a new one because we had saving power, balanced, and extreme. I'm going to do a new preset and I'm just going to call it turbo. We're going to select that turbo profile. And at the top, we've got an FPS limiter that we can set up. Unlimited up to 120 Hertz. Obviously, TDP limit. I'm going to leave it at 18, but we can go anywhere from 5 to 35. Power policy, saving, normal, high. In turbo mode, I'd probably be in high. Fan configuration, RPM config, I'm going to leave it at balanced, but from here, we've got max, custom, we can go to 100%. Yeah, you can keep this thing really chilly if you want to. CPU and GPU lock. We can set the maximum clocks on both of those from here. And we can totally disable CPU turbo because there are a lot of games out there where we just don't need it with the HX 370. But for a lot of the newer AAA stuff, I do notice it helps out, especially with something like Cyberpunk 2077. But just keep in mind, this can be totally disabled. And you can create a bunch of these profiles. You can create a 5-watt profile. You can create a 35-watt profile directly from here. And it gives us a lot to tweak and tune. Snow domain is something new that I haven't seen yet. It's a true pause function. So I need to dive more into this, but basically it'll allow you to pause applications to prevent lag. And we can whitelist different applications so they don't get paused. Again, I do need to get into this a little deeper just to see exactly what it does. Performance overlay from here. And there's a couple different ways to set this up. So simple, up top, easier to see, a little more information, and then vertical. I'm going to be using Afterburner, but that's something built in, ready to go, so you don't have to do any setup. Customize, update, and about. So yeah, I mean, they've really added a lot of stuff here with ISpace. Most of this stuff has come in really handy. I love the performance section, and given the fact that we can go anywhere from 5 watts up to 35 is really awesome with the Ayaneo 3. Now it's time to test out a few more games, and here we have Spiderman 2. Keep in mind, this game was released the day of making this video here, so it is a bit unoptimized. I mean, it's a fresh release. We're at 900p medium, FSR set to balance, and a 28 watt TDP. Not horrible, and with frame gen on, we can get over 100 FPS with the same settings here, but as soon as I take it up to 1080, it does give me some dips under 60. We're seeing an average of around 74 with it set up like this. And if you've played Spider-Man Remastered or Spider-Man Miles Morales, during the initial launch, I mean, performance was horrible on everything. I know that we'll get some more optimizations for this one. Next up, I wanted to test out WUKONG, and no matter what iGPU I run this on, I do need frame gen. So we're at 1080 low, frame gen on, but we're only at an 18 watt TDP, seeing around 76 FPS on average. This game does work great, but we do need to generate those extra frames, even on the HX 370. And finally, God of War Ragnarok, 18 watt TDP, 1080p, low medium mix, frame generation on. So with these newer AAA games on basically any iGPU is a lifesaver, especially at these higher resolutions. Now don't get me wrong, I mean, you could definitely run this at 900p low settings and get close to 60 on average, but personally, with this enabled, for me, it doesn't affect gameplay, and I just get that much smoother frame rate. So first impressions here for the Ayaneo 3, very innovative design. I do love the fact that we can eject these magic modules. We can set the controller up on this thing any way we'd like. Given that the model I have here is powered by the Ryzen Ai 9 HX 370, we've got plenty of power for AAA games. Some of the newer AAA stuff may need to be dropped down to 900p, but with this OLED display, the games are still going to look really good. The sound quality and output is unmatched in my opinion. I say this does come ahead of the Claw 8 AI, and it's really close, but we've got a lot more bass here, and those front-firing speakers, they've got those deep cavities. This thing just gets super loud, and it's very clean sound. Ergonomics are also really comfortable here. I mean, so far I've been having a great time with the Ayaneo 3, and in my full review video we will run some benchmarks. We're going to test some more games, so let me know what you want to see running on this in the comments below. We'll also have to do some battery life testing because after all, I mean, there are some handhelds out there with much larger batteries. We've only got a 50.25 watt hour battery here, and even though we're using that newer HX 370, some of those newer AAA games, you do have to take it up to 18 to 20 watts depending on what you're running. So I do have a good idea of what kind of battery life we're going to see, but in my full review, we'll get a full breakdown on that from 5 watts up to 35 watts. But that's going to wrap it up for our first look video at the Ayaneo 3. And by the way, they do offer 3 different color variants: Sky White, Starry Black, and of course the special edition Retro Power version, which we took a look at in this video. And if you're interested in learning a little more about the Ayaneo 3, I'll leave links in the description to their official website and Indiegogo. They've got a campaign running right now. If you've got any questions or you want to see anything else running on this in the full review, let me know down below. And like always, thanks for watching.